Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the complex cat and mouse game of modern financial market abuse. We're looking at how regulators are going after insider dealing, manipulation, and weak controls across both traditional markets and digital trading venues. And we're going to kick things off with a number that will, frankly, blow your mind.
All right, $17.9 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That's the amount the US SEC reported in monetary relief across all its enforcement activity for fiscal year 2025. It's a staggering number, right? It almost makes you think the markets are just completely overrun with abuse. It paints this picture of massive, systemic crime.
But here is the rhetorical rug pull. Once you look a little closer and actually exclude amounts tied to other proceedings, like, say, a massive long-running Ponzi scheme or offenses that have absolutely nothing to do with market abuse, well, that giant headline figure shrinks dramatically, down to an adjusted $2.7 billion. Now look, that is still a huge number for sure, but it perfectly illustrates why aggregate enforcement stats need some careful interpretation. You really can't just take a headline number at face value if you want to understand the true scale of market manipulation.
So, let's get into Section 1, the illusion of fines and why totals deceive. Let's explore why these headline numbers often kind of obscure the real problem. Think of the iceberg model of market abuse. The massive fines regulators announce, they're literally just the visible tip of the iceberg. The hidden realities beneath the surface are what tell the real story. For starters, you've got enforcement latency. A penalty handed down in 2026 might be for a crime committed years ago, so today's fines reflect past enforcement capacity, not current market safety. Then you've got classification issues that vary wildly between jurisdictions. Plus, regulators usually go after the individual rogue trader rather than the firm itself, which keeps corporate fine totals artificially low. And we can't forget the non-financial impacts. Trust me, imprisonment or industry bans hit individuals way harder than a cash fine. For the institutions, the hidden costs, like completely rebuilding surveillance systems, compensating customers, and taking a massive hit to their reputation, those far exceed the actual written penalty. So, while fine data is evidence of an outcome, it's a total mirage if you're using it to measure real, present-day market abuse risk.
Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy of Market Abuse and the current trading threats.
If those fines are an illusion, what does the actual crime look like on the trading floor today? First up in our rogues gallery is spoofing. The definition here is pretty straightforward. It's entering orders without a genuine intention to execute them, basically creating a mirage of market pressure. Imagine a trader placing a massive buy order just to trick everyone else into thinking there's huge demand, which naturally drives the price up. But right before anyone can actually trade against that order, bam, they cancel it, and then they sell their existing holdings at that artificially inflated price. It's pure manipulation of supply and demand.
Next up is wash trading. This is a classic move that brilliantly illustrates the concept of moving money from your left pocket to your right pocket just to look incredibly busy. In these transactions, the actual economic ownership doesn't meaningfully change. You are effectively just trading with yourself. And the whole point here? Fabricating volume, influencing the asset's price, or creating this false appearance of deep liquidity just to lure in unsuspecting investors who think the asset is super active?
Finally, we've got marking the close. This involves trading near the very end of a session, specifically to influence an official closing or settlement price. Now, it might seem like a minor manipulation, but a last-minute trade ripples out. It distorts the valuation of massive derivatives contracts, collateral requirements, and even the real-world cost of physical commodities. To give you an idea, in 2025, an Australian subsidiary of a global bank got hit with a nearly $4 million fine because their clients manipulated the close of electricity and wheat futures. That is directly threatening real-world energy and food prices.
Which brings us to Section 3, the tech-driven threat, looking at speed and scale. Because let's face it, technology is supercharging these age-old schemes into entirely new, highly sophisticated threats. We've totally moved on from isolated rogue traders sending sketchy internal emails. Today's threat landscape? It's lightning-fast, algorithmic spoofing that scatters orders across multiple venues just to hide the trader's true intent. It's pseudonymous crypto wallets trading 24/7 on decentralized exchanges, bypassing traditional market hours entirely. And it's social media flash mobs, where online influencers coordinate massive pump-and-dump campaigns to their followers before cashing out and letting it crash. The speed and scale we're seeing now are just completely unprecedented. Now, artificial intelligence is stepping up as a powerful defensive tool, but it's absolutely a double-edged sword. Yes,
AI can connect fragmented communications, correlate complex orders, and spot those subtle behavioral or linguistic changes that rigid, rules-based systems totally miss. But it also introduces serious model risk and explainability concerns. It's not some magic bullet. A highly sophisticated algorithm still desperately needs reliable underlying data. And, perhaps most importantly, it needs experienced human judgment to tell the difference between a clever, perfectly legitimate trading strategy and actual malicious market abuse.
All right, Section 4. Why surveillance fails and the danger of cascading blind spots.
With regulators increasingly turning their sights on the institutional gatekeepers rather than just the individual traders, we really have to ask, why do modern surveillance systems fail so often? Think of these failures like installing a top-of-the-line home security system, but you leave your back door wide open. If your data is incomplete, like missing new trading platforms or modern messaging apps, you're flying blind. If your monitoring is fragmented, say your trade surveillance team and your electronic communications team operate in silos and never share evidence, the full picture of the crime just vanishes. And what about poor calibration? If your system is constantly spitting out thousands of low-value alerts, the real crimes are just going to get buried in the noise. Combine that with weak escalation, where analysts don't have the market expertise or the actual authority to challenge a trader's flimsy excuse, and the whole defense basically falls like dominoes.
This crucial point is perfectly captured in a quote directly from our source material. A fast closure rate is not evidence of effectiveness where entire products, venues, or typologies remain outside the program. Think about it. Closing alerts quickly means absolutely nothing if your system is completely blind to entire trading venues. Just recently, the UK Financial Conduct Authority fined a firm over £300,000 simply because they launched a new direct market access platform and left it entirely outside their surveillance environment. They were probably closing their existing alerts super fast, but completely ignoring a massive, incredibly risky blind spot.
Let's look at the solution in Section 5, Resilient Defenses and Building the Ultimate Control Stack.
The good news here is that institutions can absolutely fix these vulnerabilities. By consolidating the findings into 6 actionable steps, we can clearly see how a properly defended institution builds its armor. It starts at Step 1, a true enterprise risk assessment. You have to map out every single product in emerging tech. Step 2 is unified data, inventorying every single feed so no blind spots exist. Steps 3 and 4 are where the real magic happens: cross-market surveillance and communications integration. Don't just look at a trade in isolation. You've got to look at the emails, the chats, and the cross-asset activity surrounding an event. Moving to Step 5, constantly test and validate your models against known cases to make sure they actually work in the real world. And finally, Step 6, accountable escalation. Empower your reviewers with the actual authority to restrict suspicious activity and report it promptly. That is how you transition from merely monitoring to actively stopping the bleeding.
Because here's the reality. Market abuse will always evolve wherever information, technology, and fragmented liquidity create an advantage for bad actors. Institutions have to connect those elements defensively to actually protect the market, which leaves us with one final critical question for every financial gatekeeper watching this explainer. Is your system actually catching the crime, or is it just counting the fines? Make sure your defenses are built for the reality of modern trading, not just the headlines.